Hi everyone, I'm Tock Custom, and I want to do a really quick demo on how I do welt pockets. So when I make messenger bags or tote bags, I'll put them on the back or on the inside, or when I make jackets, I'll put them on the front so I can get my hands in there. Brother is sponsoring this video, so big thanks to Brother for being part of this, and now I'm going to show you how I do pockets so that you can use them in your projects. So here's an example of a single welt pocket. The welt is this accent fabric right here. We have it top stitched in red, and then the inside contrast fabric is red, which is really cool. So this is a good way to make things look good and add some utility. Besides your sewing machine and thread, you'll just need some different fabrics, and I've got some heavyweight fusible interfacing here. This is really important for lots of different types of projects. I'm going to be using really obnoxious fabrics and really bright top stitch so that it's really easy to tell what I'm doing in each step as we explain this. So I've got 2 cuts of denim here, and I'm going to show you how to do a single and double welt pocket. The steps are almost identical, so I can show you how to do both at the same time. Then you'll need to pick the fabric for your welts. So this is going to be my accent fabric that's going to show up on the outside here. So I'm going to cut a little rectangle out of this floral print. There is a bit of ironing involved with this project, so make sure you've got an iron handy. For scale, this is about 10.5 inches by 6 inches, which is more than enough to make, an 8-inch wide welt pocket. So we have our accent fabrics cut out, and I'm going to scoot these over, and we are going to make some exact copies out of fusible interfacing. So I'm just going to lay these shapes right on top of this, and then cut it out with a rotary cutter or scissors. So here's how this works. We've got our fabric and our interfacing. The back side is smooth, and the front side has all these little dots. The dots are adhesive that when you heat up with an iron will fuse to your fabric. So we are going to put this wrong side up and then put the adhesive or dotted side down on the fabric. So with an iron on high heat, I'm going to press this into shape. I don't want to iron it around and smooth it around. I want to just press it, pick it up, and press it down. Otherwise, you can kind of stretch either the fabric or the interfacing, and we want this to stay right where it is. Okay, so there is our interfaced piece of fabric, and if you notice any parts are puckering, you can smooth it out like this if you need to, but this looks fine. Now that I've got these interfaced, I actually do want to kind of scale these down a little bit. All right, so I just trimmed these down to 9 inches wide by 5 inches tall, which is more than enough for about a 7-inch pocket. All right, now I'm going to put these aside, and the last thing we have to cut out is our pocket bag. I'm going to use black denim for both, just because I want it to be a little bit more hidden. And the way I do this is I'll just lay one of my welt strips right here, and then I will just use this 18-inch quilting ruler to kind of line up with that edge. And then I will just end up cutting 18-inch long pocket bags that are the same exact width of our accent fabric. Perfect, so now we've got our accent fabrics interfaced and both of our pocket bags are ready. Just to simplify, this is all you need to make your welt pocket, is a strip of accent fabric that's interfaced and a pocket bag that's the same width. That's all we need. The next step is make sure your pocket is right side up, and then we've got our accent, and we're going to line that top edge up right there so they are right sides together. Now I'm just using pins to hold those together because we're going to end up sewing right there. Now we're going to take this over to the sewing machine, and we're just going to stitch across right there at 1/2 inch seam allowance, and I will show you the stitching. For all the sewing in this project, I'm going to be using the Brother Stellaire XJ1, just if anyone is curious. Now I just need to show you one of these since they're both the same steps, but I'm going to start my stitch about 1/2 inch onto the fabric, do a back stitch, and then we're just going to sew all the way across our pinned edges, and I'm going to end with a back stitch as well. This next step is optional, but I want to fold the seam so it's falling towards my accent fabric. I'm not going to iron it because you're not going to see it, but I'm just going to top stitch this across. So this is just going to make sure that the seam stays strong and lays flat. Again, you won't see it, but it's something I like to do. Perfect, so hopefully you have something that looks like one of these. Now I'm going to scoot these over, and we're going to bring back our panels of fabric. And I want to lay these right side up so that we're looking at the outside of the denim here. And the way this works is we're going to pin our accent welt fabric to the outside of our project, which may seem kind of strange, but just trust the process. And I'm just pinning these so this won't move around at all. So we're just going to focus on one because it's going to be the same for both steps. Right? So our fabric is about 9 inches wide here, and I want to bring this in by about an inch on either side. So I'm just putting 2 little dots here, and I'm gonna do 2 little dots over here. So now we're gonna draw kind of a rectangle here, and the rectangle is where exactly your pocket is gonna show up, kind of like on this bag here. So the first thing I wanna do is figure out where the top of my rectangle is gonna be. And I'm gonna use a pen, which I don't necessarily recommend. I just wanna make sure you can see this on camera. Yeah, I think that's pretty obvious. Then we have to decide how thick we want our welt to be. So typically I'll do 1/2 inch. So I'm gonna line that line up with a 1/2 inch dash on my quilting ruler here. Then I'm just gonna draw a second line like this. It's really important that these lines are parallel with your project, otherwise it might look kind of askew. And if it is, you can just unpin this and shift the fabric and then reset it. Anyway, I'm going to close this rectangle by just drawing some lines like this. And the reason I wouldn't recommend using a pen is because I don't want this to bleed through, but I just want to show you how this works. Next, we're going to draw some little triangles, kind of like this, so it should make kind of like a right angle where they come together. And then we're going to do it on the other side as well. There's probably math to this, but I usually just eyeball it. Then I'm going to turn it sideways. We're going to draw a line from the point of one triangle to the point of the other triangle. So this is exactly what you want to see. And now I'm going to take this to the sewing machine and we're going to sew on the outside of this rectangle all the way around. And I'll show you how I do this because this is definitely kind of a beginner tutorial. Before I sew these, this was our single welt and I did 1/2 inch thick right here. And for the double welt, I wanted to see if it would look better at 3/4 inch. So this one's a little bit wider. It shouldn't matter either way, but I just want to see how they look. Now we're back at our machine and I'm going to feed this in so that we're starting at, we'll say the top left corner, I guess. And I'm going to put my presser foot down and the needle down right on the top of that corner. So it goes right in where we want to start. Now we're not worrying about the center line or the little triangles. We're just going to sew around the rectangle that we drew. So I'm going to do a couple of stitches, a couple of back stitches, and I want to be really careful to sew as straight as I can on the lines that we drew. And then I'm going to stop right on one corner, lift up my foot, do a pivot. And for welt pockets, I actually count how many stitches I do for the depth. So I'm going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Pick up my foot, pivot. That way, if you do the same amount of stitches, you're going to make sure it's perfectly even on both sides. Okay. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I'm going to do one more pivot and a little front and back stitch. And we are done with this step. So you should just have one big rectangle sewn around your fabric right there. So now I'm going to take out my pins, and it might be kind of hard to see the stitching because black thread on black ink, but it's there and it looks great. So now what we want to do is we want to cut along that center line, and typically I use a rotary blade because it's really easy to do it, but if you don't have one, you can fold the fabric in half, kind of like that, if this makes sense the way I'm doing it, and I'm just doing a little snip with some scissors. And now I've got a little hole there where I can get my scissors in and start cutting all the way across. Anyway, I'm going to cut on that line all the way up to the point of our first triangle, and it's really helpful to use some really sharp precision blades for this. Now I'm going to cut at a diagonal right into the corner of our stitching without cutting through the stitches that we just did. So something like that should be good there, and then something like this. And it's really important you get all the way in that corner, because if you don't, you're going to get these weird pleats and puckers on the outside. This just takes a little bit of practice, but you'll get the hang of it pretty quickly. So now I'm just doing the other side, the same that we did over here. So now you should have your pocket sewn to the outside of whatever your project is with a big hole cut that looks something like this. So this next part might feel a little weird if you've never done this before, but I'm going to take all this fabric and everything, and we're going to put it through the hole that we just cut and pull it out what will be the back side of your panel of fabric. Once you get it all through, we just want to make sure that everything is laying as flat as we can, and then we're going to press this into shape. Now before I press this, I want to make sure I'm pulling enough of this accent fabric so I can just barely see the red denim. That way you'll make sure that all of this fabric is hidden on the back side. That might make more sense after you're done, but hopefully you can just trust me on that. Perfect, so you should have a nice straight rectangular hole, and this is the back side, and the front side of your panel should look something like this. And if you get any little puckers in the corner, now would be a good time to iron those flat. So this looks good. Now we can go back to the back side, and this is the part where we create the welt accent. So very simply, I'm just gonna fold the bottom part of this accent fabric kind of from underneath. So it's just filling the negative space of that hole like this. So now I can just barely see kind of a sliver of an opening there, which is fine. So I'm gonna fold this like this and hold it, and then we're just gonna press this into shape just like that. Now before I move this, I like to put a couple of pins through all those layers on the sides, just to hold everything together. Good, so now I can check the front to see how this is gonna look, and that is how our accent fabric is gonna look. And I didn't really plan this out with the cow print showing up great here, but you get the idea of at least how to do the construction. So now what we're gonna do is we're gonna take our terrible orange top stitch and we're going to stitch all the way around the outside of this as close as we can to the edge there. And it's really important that you keep this open when you stitch your top edge so you don't sew your pocket shut. And the idea is so that we're kind of locking these folded edges into place so that it'll stay like that forever. I almost forgot, this is the only part that's different between the single and double welt pocket. So I'm gonna zoom through this part real quick until we get to the point where it's different. While I'm preparing this, I just wanna mention, this is like the dumbed down kind of hacker version of doing welt pockets. There is a much more old school traditional way of doing this. This is just a much easier, faster way of doing it. So the only difference for the double welt pocket is when you get to this part where you see a big open rectangle is we're gonna fold the bottom half up by about the amount that we cut in the middle here. So I'm gonna kind of fold that over and pull it back with my fingers. And I'm gonna kind of try to feel through the fabric so that we're just covering half of that opening, right? And I'm gonna press that flat. And something that's really helpful about the interfacing that we put on this accent fabric is it really helps it hold its shape when you iron it. Now I'm gonna flip this upside down. I'm gonna kind of fold this over, press this with my fingers, and then fold this around it. And it should hopefully come right up to the edge of what was the bottom half. And we're gonna press that flat. So I'm flipping this back right side up and I'm going to iron it one more time. Then I'm gonna use 4 pins kind of sideways to really make sure that these folds stay right where I want them. I'm also putting the pin heads on the outside just in case I need to sew over this if I can't get them out. Anyway, once you've got that all set, you can finally flip this over and look at the outside of your panel. And this is what makes it a double welt pocket, is you've got 2 accent pieces with your opening between the 2 like that. So this is more typical for like the inside pocket of a suit or the back pockets for khaki pants or something like that. Anyway, we're gonna use the same terrible orange top stitch to do the same thing that we're gonna do with the other one and stitch all the way around. Now the first thing I need to do is put in our top stitch, so I'm going to do that real quick. This machine is amazing. All I have to do is hit a button and it will thread it by itself. I don't even have to touch it. And pull this out the back and we are good to go. Now I'm starting on the top left corner, kind of where this opening starts. And I'm going to go and put my presser foot down like really close to the top of that red denim there. Again, I want to make sure I do not sew those 2 panels together. So I'm going to do a couple stitches, 1 back stitch, and then I'm just going to get as close as I can to that top edge, as straight as I can all the way across. Okay, here's my first corner. Okay, 6 stitches, another pivot. All right, so I'm going to come up and I'll just back stitch right there. Forgive me if I'm blocking the camera. Cut my thread, and now we've got our whole welt pocket top stitched in orange, which is hilarious, but it's going to hold it together. Now for our green denim, we're going to do the same exact thing. All right, so we've got both of our welts top stitched. Now let's go see how these look. Now I'm going to take out all my pins here, and then I'm going to flip these right side up and see how they look. All right, these both look pretty good, so I'm just going to clip any loose threads that I see. All right, so we just have one step left, and I'm going to flip this over, and then we're just going to fold our pocket bag so that this edge of it is flush with the top edge of our accent fabric, like that. So once I match up my corners, I'm going to just put a pin right here and right here. And then typically I will iron this flat, just so that my pocket bag is going to stay nice and flat on the inside of my project. All right, so these are both ready for our last stitch, and all we have to do is just sew from the bottom to the top, across, and then back down, and that's going to sew our pocket bag shut, and then we're going to be done with this project. And the easiest way I've found to do that is to turn your project upside down. So we're going to fold this right edge over so you can see the pocket there, and then the bottom edge, and then the left edge. And what we're looking to do is just get this out of the way so we can sew our pocket bag along this line all the way across and then down the other edge, and then we are going to be all done with our welt pockets. Normally I would switch back to my black thread, but I'm going to use this orange so you can see the stitching a little bit better actually. So anyway, I'm going to start at what was the bottom left corner of our pocket, which is now the top right for now. Do a little back stitch. I'm just going to sew all the way up to the corner. I want to make sure I take my pins out because that will be a problem. When I get to where my presser foot is going to go just on top of kind of this accent fabric, that's where I want to pivot. Take out my other pin, go into that corner, and now I'm just going to sew all the way down to the bottom right corner. All right, so we are all done. Now I'm going to finish the other one and see how they look. All right, we should be all set now. So I'm going to unfold this, and that should look good. And then we're going to do the same here. Now I've got two panels with two different types of welt pockets, and I'm going to press these one last time just to get any of these creases out. Okay, these both look perfect now, and you guys might have noticed there's a little bit of pockets sticking out the bottom of these panels. If that ever happens with one of your projects, all you have to do is just stitch across just the pocket itself where you want it to stop, and then just cut it along that bottom edge, and it should fit into whatever project you are working on. And now we've got a pocket that is perfectly sized for whatever you're making. Here's one last shot just so you can get a close-up of what we did. You can see our black denim in our pocket bag, and our welts look really nice and clean. So feel free to play around with different fabrics so you can, get whatever look you're going for. All right, so we've got both of our pockets done, which look really good. And keep in mind, you can change the scale or width or size as you need to. But hopefully you learned something about making pockets or interfacing or anything else. Another big thanks to Brother for sponsoring this video and this series. If you have any questions, please let me know in the comments. Otherwise, thank you so much for watching, and we will see you in our next video.